August 6, 1945, 8:15 a.m. A single B-29 bomber named Enola Gay releases a uranium bomb over Hiroshima, Japan. 43 seconds later, 70,000 people are dead. By the end of the year, the death toll will reach 140,000. 3 days later, another atomic bomb falls on Nagasaki. 70,000 more deaths. For 8 decades, we've been told a simple story. Japan refused to surrender. The bombs forced them to. The alternative was an invasion costing 1 million American lives. Tragic but necessary. But what if that's not the complete story? What if Japan was already trying to surrender? What if American military leaders knew an invasion wasn't necessary? What if the real target wasn't Tokyo, but Moscow? This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented history, hidden in classified cables and private diaries. A history that challenges everything we thought we knew. The question isn't just why America dropped the bomb. The question is, who were they really trying to intimidate? By summer 1945, Japan is finished. Not losing, finished. The statistics tell the story. Only 12% of Japan's merchant fleet remains. The island nation depends on imports, and the sea lanes are cut. Food supplies are critical. Industrial production has collapsed. Oil reserves are nearly exhausted. American B-29s have been systematically destroying Japanese cities for months. The Tokyo firebombing on March 9th killed 100,000 in a single night, more than either atomic bomb. By August, 66 cities have been burned. The military situation? Japan's navy was destroyed at Leyte Gulf. The air force is gone. Kamikaze attacks are now the only option because there's no fuel. The army has millions of men on paper, but they're scattered, undersupplied, cut off. Japan is finished. Everyone knows it. The question is how it ends. Here's what most people don't know. Japan is actively trying to surrender in summer 1945. Inside the Japanese government, the Supreme Council is divided. 3 members want to fight to the last man, but 3 want peace: Foreign Minister Togo, Navy Minister Yonai, and Prime Minister Suzuki. Emperor Hirohito himself is privately pushing for peace. They can't surrender directly to America. The military hardliners might stage a coup. So they try another approach. They reach out to the Soviet Union to mediate peace. In July 1945, Foreign Minister Togo sends messages to Japan's ambassador in Moscow. Approach the Soviets about peace negotiations. Japan wants out. They're willing to surrender. They just want assurance the emperor won't be executed. Here's the crucial part. America is reading all these messages. The magic intercepts, American codebreakers, have cracked Japan's diplomatic codes. Every cable between Tokyo and Moscow is being read in Washington in real time. American leaders know Japan is trying to surrender. They know Japan wants Soviet mediation. They know Japan's conditions. They know Japan is beaten and looking for a way out. So what did America's top military commanders think about using the atomic bomb? General Dwight Eisenhower. Japan was already defeated, and dropping the bomb was completely unnecessary. Admiral William Leahy, Chief of Staff to Truman. The use of this barbarous weapon was of no material assistance in our war against Japan. The Japanese were already defeated and ready to surrender. General Douglas MacArthur believed Japan would surrender without invasion or atomic bombs. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz believed the naval blockade would force surrender. General Curtis LeMay, who ran the bombing campaign, the atomic bomb is militarily unnecessary. Even the official U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey concluded Japan would have surrendered even if the atomic bombs had not been dropped, even if Russia had not entered the war, and even if no invasion had been planned. The top military commanders, the men who fought the war, believed the bombs were unnecessary. So why drop them? The decision isn't military, it's political, made by Secretary of War Henry Stimson and Secretary of State James Burns, with President Truman's approval. Truman became president in April 1945 when Roosevelt died. He'd been vice president for 82 days. He didn't know about the atomic bomb until after becoming president. He's new, uncertain, dependent on advisors. And his advisors are thinking about 3 things. First, the money. The Manhattan Project cost $2 billion. If the war ends without using it, Congress will ask why we spent that much on a weapon we never used. Second, domestic politics. American casualties have been horrific. The public wants the war over and Japan punished. If Truman has a weapon to end it instantly and doesn't use it, he'll face massive backlash. Third, and this is crucial, the Soviet Union. By July 1945, the wartime alliance is fracturing. Stalin is consolidating Eastern Europe. Churchill warns about an Iron Curtain, and Stalin has agreed to enter the war against Japan. If the Soviets help defeat Japan, they'll want territorial concessions, occupation zones, influence in Asia. But if America can force Japan to surrender before the Soviets enter, then America alone shapes post-war Asia. No Soviet occupation, no Soviet influence. The atomic bomb solves all these problems. End the war before the Soviets can join. Demonstrate American power in a way that makes Stalin think twice. July 17, 1945, Potsdam Conference. Truman learns the first atomic test succeeded. He casually mentions to Stalin that America has a powerful new weapon. Stalin already knows. Soviet spies infiltrated the Manhattan Project. But he plays dumb. On July 26th, the Allies issue the Potsdam Declaration demanding Japan's unconditional surrender. It threatens prompt and utter destruction, but doesn't mention the bomb. Critically, it doesn't guarantee the emperor's safety, the one thing Japan keeps asking for. Japan's government debates. Prime Minister Suzuki announces Japan will mokusatsu the declaration, a term meaning withhold comment, but translated as reject with contempt. Whether this is genuine misunderstanding or convenient mischaracterization is debatable, but it gives Truman justification. Here's the crucial timing. Stalin told Truman the Soviets would declare war on Japan August 15th. The bombs are dropped August 6th and 9th. America is racing to end the war before the Soviets can claim credit. August 6th, Hiroshima, 70,000 dead instantly, 140,000 by year's end. The Japanese government is stunned, but military hardliners aren't ready to surrender. They argue this might be America's only bomb. Then comes the second shock, August 8th, midnight. The Soviet Union declares war and invades Manchuria. 1.5 million Soviet troops pour across the border. Japan's Kwantung Army, over 1 million men but under-equipped and under-trained, collapses. For Japan's leaders, this is catastrophic. They'd hoped the Soviets would mediate peace. Instead, they've joined the war. Japan now faces enemies on all sides with zero hope of negotiated settlement. Foreign Minister Togo later says the Soviet invasion was a more direct blow than the atomic bombs. August 9th, Nagasaki, 70,000 more dead, 2 atomic bombs, Soviet invasion between them. Japan's situation is impossible. But even now, surrender isn't automatic. The Big Six remain deadlocked. It takes Emperor Hirohito's unprecedented intervention to break the tie. Military officers even plan a failed coup to prevent surrender. August 15th, Hirohito announces surrender on radio. Notably, his speech barely mentions the bombs. He talks about the war situation and avoiding complete destruction. The bombs accelerated the process, but they weren't the only factor, possibly not even the primary one. In the years after Hiroshima, the official narrative starts to crack. The 1946 Strategic Bombing Survey interviews hundreds of Japanese officials. Conclusion: Japan would have surrendered by November, even without the bombs, Soviet entry, or invasion. Scientists who built the bomb express regret. Leo Szilard calls its use unnecessary. Admiral Leahy writes in his memoirs that it violated ethical warfare standards. But most revealing is how American leaders behaved after the war. They don't act like people who made a tragic but necessary decision. They act like people engaged in psychological warfare against the Soviets. Secretary Burns makes clear in private conversations that he sees the bomb primarily as leverage against Stalin. The bomb will make Stalin more manageable in Eastern Europe, he says. Truman's diary, published years later, contains revealing entries about using the bomb to impress the Soviets and demonstrate American power. The pattern is clear. The atomic bomb wasn't just about ending the war quickly. It was about ending it before the Soviets could claim a major role and demonstrating to Stalin that America possessed unprecedented power. This is atomic diplomacy, using nuclear weapons as instruments of political intimidation. The bombs were dropped on Japan, but the audience was Moscow. What if America hadn't dropped the bombs? The evidence suggests Japan would have surrendered anyway. The Soviet invasion destroyed hope for negotiated peace. The blockade was starving Japan. Conventional bombing had destroyed most cities. The situation was hopeless. Japan's government was divided, but the emperor wanted peace. Surrender was coming. Perhaps in August, perhaps September, but it was coming. Would this have cost American lives? Possibly if isolated fighting continued, but the often cited figure of 1 million casualties from an invasion is questionable. That's a worst-case planning scenario. Most military estimates were far lower, and most commanders didn't think invasion was necessary at all. Would more Japanese have died without the bombs? Possibly. Continued bombing, blockade, and potential Soviet invasion could have caused massive casualties, but potentially fewer than the 210,000 who died from the atomic bombs, plus tens of thousands more from long-term radiation. We'll never know. History happened the way it happened. But the decision was more complex than saving American lives. It was strategic, made in the context of emerging Cold War competition. It was about shaping the post-war order, about demonstrating power. Japan was the target, the Soviet Union was the audience. So what's the truth? Multiple factors drove the decision to drop the atomic bombs, military pressure to end the war quickly. Real but overstated, given what commanders actually said. Political pressure domestically, Truman couldn't be seen as weak after so much sacrifice. Financial justification, $2 billion spent, needed results. Soviet competition, the primary unstated factor, end the war before Stalin could claim credit and demonstrate overwhelming American power. Fear of invasion casualties, genuine concern, but based on worst-case scenarios, most military leaders thought were unlikely. There wasn't one reason, there were many. Some justified, some questionable, all consequential. The tragedy is that 200,000 people, mostly civilians, died in what was as much a demonstration to Moscow as military action against Tokyo. This doesn't make Truman a war criminal. The context matters. Japan started the war with a sneak attack, committed atrocities across Asia, and American casualties had been horrific. No one fully understood radiation effects. The pressure was immense, but it does mean the simple narrative we've been told isn't complete. The decision was about power, politics, and positioning for the post-war world as much as military necessity. August 6 and 9, 1945. 2 atomic bombs, over 200,000 dead. We've been told a simple story about saving American lives. The reality is more complex. Japan was trying to surrender. American military leaders said the bombs were unnecessary. The Soviet invasion may have been more decisive, and the timing, before Soviets could claim credit, reveals motives beyond simply ending the war. The survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the hibakusha, carry physical and emotional scars today. They didn't deserve what happened. Most were civilians with no say in their government's decisions. We remember them not to equate American actions with Japanese atrocities. Japan bore responsibility for the war, but we remember them to understand the full complexity of what happened and why. The atomic bombs ended the war, but they also started something else: the nuclear age, the Cold War, and an era where human survival depends on never using these weapons again. The real reason they dropped the bomb, there wasn't just one reason: military, political, strategic, psychological. Some justified, some questionable, all consequential. Understanding that complexity doesn't dishonor those who made difficult decisions in difficult times. It honors the truth, and it honors the dead. The bombs fell on Japan, but the message was aimed at Moscow, and the world would never be the same.